Hello everyone and welcome. Today I'll be showcasing my tank build for the Dragonknight class. I've been playing the Dragonknight class as my main since the beta for ESO released. Tanking is a very innate function of this class and is a reason it remains a staple among all tank choices in the game. First, here are our stats with our food of choice equipped. You can see that we're close to 52,000 health and that we're sitting at 64 points into our health attribute. For this build, I'd highly recommend running a Nord. They have amazing racial passives such as Rugged, extra physical and spell resistance, and Stalwart, where you get extra damage taken, generating you more ultimate. These two passives play very well into the Dragonknight class. Of course, if you needed a secondary option, I would offer that you would pick Imperial for their cost reductions. Our food of choice is going to stay with Bewitched Sugar Skulls. A nice tri-stat buff here, a little extra health recovery. Alternatively, you could run the Crown Fortifying Meal. The game will give you a ton of these. Nice little tri-stat buff here. And with our potions, we want to run these Crown Tri-Restoration potions just as well. Now, you can buy the crafted alternative of these. There is no difference. Whatever you have more of, whichever is more accessible to you. The game will give you a ton of the crown potions. That is why I choose to use them preferably. Now, for our item sets here, we're going to run Bloodspawn. Bloodspawn has been a long staple of the Dragonknight class. It is amazing once you get into those trash fights. It'll generate a bunch of extra ultimate and buff your resistances. You do not necessarily need to run Bloodspawn. When you're playing a Dragonknight tank, your monster set of choice is a very open option. Some easy alternatives here, you can run Tremor Scale. Gives you a little bit of extra penetration and a little damage. You can run Lord Warden for a group physical and spell resistance buff. The monster set is an open thing for you to change depending on your needs. Now I also run Ebon. Ebon is found in Crypt of Hearts 1. It's a very amazing set for tanks. 2 lines of max health, some extra healing taken, and near extra 1000 health for everyone in your group. Very dependable set, you're going to see it very often. I would highly recommend you pick it up. Now lastly, we run Yolnahkriin. It's a set from Sunspire. Make sure that you run a weakening enchant on your sword and a crusher enchant on your staff. These are going to help your team survive and do some more extra DPS. Now with your staff, the ice staff is your safest option. It's going to apply a damage shield and slow down your enemies. Alternatively, you could use the Blockade of Storms, which is a lightning staff. It will raise your group DPS just a little bit. Of course, every little bit helps when you're running group content. You're going to want Infused on your weapons, help buff up those enchantments that you got there. On the large pieces of your armor, you're going to want multi-effect enchantments, tri-stat buffs, otherwise called. Make sure you have that on your shield just as well. And all your little pieces here, you're just going to run max health. I would always recommend running a few pieces of your armor in sturdy, help reduce your block costs. If you have an infused or well fitted, that is okay too. On my jewelry here, I run everything with a prismatic cost reduction enchantment. Now you can see here that I also use healthy. Ideally you're going to want infused, but if you run healthy, that's okay. The main goal of a tank is not to die. But you're going to want these cost reduction enchantments, help bring down the cost of all your skills. Then for our CP here, most important tree, of course, is going to be your fitness. I choose Boundless Vitality, just give me a little bit extra health. Pain's Refuge. Every negative effect on you is going to reduce the damage that you take. If you're in a very mob-heavy dungeon or group content, all those things that are hitting you and not getting purged right away makes you harder to kill. I also choose to run Shield Master. Of course, I don't have this fully upgraded because I'm not the correct amount of CP. Dragonknights really excel with their damage shields, especially when they're tanking. So I like to pick this up. Helps you bring down your costs a little bit. I have Bastion here. Extra damage effectiveness on your shields and damage against shielded enemies. Ideally, you don't need it for the damage you're doing to shielded enemies, but raising your own damage shield effectiveness is pretty great when you're a tank. And then Wardmaster. I choose this one because it is very easy to keep up damage shields when you're playing a Dragonknight health tank. So if you can reduce the amount of damage you're blocking while you have a damage shield up, that is much less damage you are going to take. Into our warfare tree here, I use Duelist Rebuff. Little extra damage blocked from any single target. Reinforce gives you a damage shield anytime you begin bracing, blocking. Unassailable, less damage from AoE taken. And Cutting Defense. Anytime you get hit, it's just gonna start proccing this. Skills off your max health, does a little bit of damage. Can activate your weapon enchants and poisons. So if you're not actively hitting somebody with your weapon, and then, you know, the boss hits you, you can proc your Crusher enchant, you can proc your Weakening enchant on them just from this passive. It's nice. Again, your green tree, pretty useless when it comes to anything in actual content that you want to run. I keep Steed's Blessing for the extra movement speed, and these here, run whatever you want for these extras. Liquid Efficiency, Rationer, Steadfast Enchantment. These are all things you can run if you actually, you know, don't do anything else with your character. As you see here, I do a lot of crafting, that's why I have these already slotted. These are a very optional tree you can work around with. It's not going to matter too much for your actual combat. Now with my skills here, I have my main taunt is Pierce Armor. It's going to apply Major and Minor Breach. That is a lot of penetration, and that is also a taunt skill. So when you hit somebody with this, they are going to be directed all their aggro right on you. I have Green Dragon Blood for my main heal. This is a really oh shit kind of ability. If you're really low on health, you press this once, you get 33% of your missing health back, which is a lot. Hardened Armor, this is something you could substitute. I don't like to substitute this, because it also returns damage to anyone that's hitting you in melee range, and it gives you a 15,000 damage shield, along with your Major Resolve, which buffs your resistances. Alternatively, you can go to the Mage's Guild, get Equilibrium, you're going to morph that to Balance. That will help you sustain your magicka almost indefinitely. Personally, I have never had a problem with that sustain, so I don't actually run this skill, but it is highly recommended that you would run Equilibrium, morph to Balance. Then I run Igneous Shield, another huge damage shield. Mine will absorb 12.7k damage, and it gives all nearby allies almost 5.1 damage shield. This also gives you major mending. Any healing you do will be increased. So if you have this up by the time you hit your green dragon blood here, you will get a little bit of extra healing. Molten armaments. You can choose the alternative morph. I like to keep molten armaments because it'll increase the damage by heavy attacks. So while I'm sitting there just doing my little pea shooter damage on the boss, at least I'm doing a little bit more. You're going to give yourself and your allies major brutality and sorcery. Give them extra weapon damage, extra spell damage. And the kingpin of all abilities for tanking in the game, Magma Shell. This is God mode for 12 seconds. If you hit this ability, your resources are going to be near restored, and you are going to be almost invincible for 12 seconds. Any allies near you are going to gain a damage shield for 115% of their max health. This is God mode for you, and this can keep your team alive. It's a very important skill. You must have it. On our back bar here, we run Sanguine Altar. It's a nice little buff, stays up for 40 seconds. Applies minor lifesteal to enemies. You're going to do a small amount of healing whenever your allies damage any enemy with that minor lifesteal on them. And they can heal themselves up to 40% of their max health with the Blood Funnel synergy. It's a nice little oh shit button that will, show up for them when they need it. Your range taunt is going to be Inner Rage. Has a nice little synergy on it that can do extra damage to the taunted enemy. Blockade of Frost. Always go with the blockade on your tank. You do not need the DPS from the exploding morph. Now this could also give your allies Frost Safeguard for 6 seconds. This is going to apply an almost 16,000 damage shield from projectiles only. It's not the most useful, but it is nice because there are a lot of squishy people in DPS or healer that might get one shot by a ranged attack, and that might just save them. Of course, this can also apply chilled enemies, frozen, immobilized for 4 seconds, easy to keep them where you want them. Frost will also slow them down. Then you have Unrelenting Grip, your chain, your pull, whatever you want to call it. Once you hit this on somebody, it's going to give you Major Expedition. Now the nice thing about this skill is that if you cannot pull the target, it does not take any magicka from you. It is all restored. Choking Talons is pretty important. Gives your enemies minor mime, reduces their damage down a little bit, and of course it does a little amount of damage for you. And for your group DPS buff, you run Aggressive Horn. Chances are many of your healers will already be running a horn. If that is the case, you can alternatively change this out for the Standard of Might. But if you're running a coordinated group, it's just nice to run Aggressive Horn. You can have extra uptime on this. Extra max magicka and stamina, and critical damage by 20% for 9 seconds. That is how you make one of the most OP tanks in the game. This can get you through almost any content in your game. It's gotten me through almost every little bit of content I've ever wanted to run. I hope you enjoy the build. I hope you leave a like and subscribe, and I'll see you all next time.